We see that Kalonzo Musyoka has backed the referendum bid and also defends the Senate. I remember that when he spoke to Hussein Mohammed last week on Tuesday during the Newsnight show, he was saying that a referendum that he is thinking of is one that would create positions of a prime minister and deputies, as well as maybe having the president and probably one or two deputies. And of course, there has been several proposals, suggestions that people are giving in the public arena. And I have two politicians here. Do you think that we need that referendum, and specifically what issues do you think we should be targeting to change as we carry on with this conversation?
Well, first of all, I think the Constitution is now headed towards its 10th year, and I think that's a good enough time for us to be able to sit back, reflect, and see where it is that this Constitution may have worked or not worked. So first, let me debunk the idea that some people have said that, you know, it's too early to tamper with this Constitution. It is never too early to look at a problem that exists. If the Constitution had a 20% deficit and a 20% which William Ruto and the no side of the referendum then said needed to be fixed, they're still not okay at the moment. The second reason why I think we need to revisit this, and especially a constitution is a negotiated document, and it's negotiated for purposes of, among other things, demarcating the boundaries of how we carry out our politics. You remember that the Bomas draft adopted a system, and I think one of the issues being raised by former Vice President Kalonzo Musyoka about an upper Senate, and I'm not saying I support or don't support that position, but that was the Bomas draft. Other than Senate being the upper house, there was the issue about having a parliamentary system. And I think that's one of the key issues I would take to this referendum, given the very contested and winner-take-it-all approach to politics that the presidential system has given us. There is thirdly the sense of exclusivity which is tied to that presidential system. There are about 42 tribes, 5 of which are dominant tribes. The moment you have the presidential system that says you're either president or deputy president, then if you're Raila, it doesn't matter, you stay out in the cold. If you're Kalonzo, stay out in the cold. Before, you used to have leader of opposition, which came with its own stature and responsibilities. You are able to lead your people, and remember somebody like Raila Odinga, he leads more than half of this country. So when you say that he and all the people that he supports, or people who he subscribes to his philosophy, are excluded from government or from parliament, that cannot be a good thing. So I would revisit the presidential system and go back to the Bomas draft parliamentary system. For a fourth reason, the question of oversight and accountability. We adopted a system where we elect cabinet secretaries from outside of parliament. And what we have seen is a bunch of very arrogant, small demigods that we have created, whom we as parliament appropriate money to. We appoint them, but they are not accountable to us. We are the representatives of the people under Article 94 and 95. We oversight government. We preside over the vetting of these people. And more importantly, we do the budgeting. But then people will refuse whether or not they decide whether or not they want to come before a parliamentary committee. So in terms of oversight, I think going back to a parliamentary system, we would strengthen the institution of parliament and be able to hold people that we appoint more accountable for the duties and the responsibilities we give them.
Before I go to Senator Matangi, when you said that we have some arrogant demigods who don't want to be accountable to parliament, even as parliament tries, or rather embarks on playing its oversight role, don't you think it's a challenge of the personalities that you get, and don't you think you actually have a role to discipline such kind of people by taking action from the parliament side, instead of really reviewing the constitution to ensure that members of parliament become cabinet secretaries?
That is true. The parliament, especially when it's sitting at the committee level, has powers similar to those of the High Court. But you and I know that in a system where one party or the ruling party has a majority, What has happened about the sugar report? Why was it shut down? I think 80% because 2 cabinet secretaries or 3 were mentioned. If you had a conversation with the leader of majority after that, he clearly said if you people had left out these 2-3 cabinet secretaries, that report would probably have survived.
So, how different will it be if the cabinet secretaries are members of parliament within the majority party in parliament?
First of all, we used to have what you call the prime minister question time. These people are people who sit inside of parliament. They don't have to choose whether or not they will be in parliament. They sit in parliament. So parliament itself will be dealing with people who are their peers. The only difference is that they have cabinet responsibilities. So this idea that you have completely separated the executive from people that you want to put to account, to put questions to. You have cabinet assistant secretaries now being sent, and PSs, and I'm not saying they're not people capable intellectually to respond, but there is the political accountability where you say this is where the buck stops. For example, now, the Minister for Transport should have been, Parliament should have adjourned, and the Minister for Transport be put to task. Why do we have these kind of things happening at this day and age? But in order to get the Minister for Transport now, you will probably have to write letters, do reminders, do a threat, and after those threats, you will never be able to get a cabinet secretary to either be impeached or even to get a warning.
Do you think that for Parliament to play its oversight role effectively, the solution is to review the law to have members of Parliament or other cabinet secretaries coming from among the members of Parliament?
Let me say to begin with, because you've asked that question fundamentally based on the entire concept of constitutional review via referendum right now. I think it's good that we set the pace correctly in this debate by first saying, and that's my view, that the discussion on whether should we or should we not have a referendum at this time, I believe every Kenyan is in agreement that at one point or the other, there are fundamental issues that have arisen as a result of us having tried out and tested the implementation of the Constitution through its transition up to where we are. There are several areas that we would need to look at. I think that's a foregone conclusion. Number two, then would be saying that the question when we ask about is it the right time? So what time are we speaking about? Are we speaking about the year 2018, 2019, 2020, or within this term of government? And I believe if you are talking about that time block of between 2017 and 2022, one would be saying it is an ideal time that we would have that debate. But is it the right time in the sense that you would be saying that after the election in 2017, then in 2018, when we just started the year, then we'll be saying that we want to hold a referendum. And remember, we had the presidential election in December of 2017.
Right.
Yes. So now we are yet even to get to December of 2022. And we are of 2018. And we are saying we want to have a referendum. So the question here that recurs in my mind is, even if we would be talking about a constitutional review, shouldn't we have a well-structured time management arrangement where we would be saying, first, okay, finish your elections in 2017, give yourself at least a year, 2, then the third year, you can implement what promises you have made to the people in terms of give back now that you have been elected. And then probably now the fourth year to the election, before 2022, let's maybe like 2021, you'll be saying, can we now have a well-structured debate on what kind of referendum would we want to have? And remember, when you talk about a referendum, the Constitution is very clear on how do you provide for a referendum. We have a referendum via a parliamentary initiative, a popular initiative, and so on. And one of the fundamental questions we would be asking ourselves now is, what is the question that we want to make the referendum question? Once those issues have been raised and debated, then we can say, okay, fine, let us have a well-organized, structured debate on the referendum. The reason I say this, Kituko, is because actually that debate can degenerate even into now such a chaotic scenario, you know, because, and I want us to be clear, that we remind Kenyans, remember the kind of campaign that we had when we had the orange banana referendum drive. And again, the yes and no. And it blew up into a full campaign, just like the way you campaign during a general election. So do we want to take the country immediately into that kind of mode and mood, and then we have no time to implement? So I would be saying, fine, let us have a structured debate. Let that time, at least probably from 2021 there, we can discuss the issues, have a well-structured arrangement, and then if we are satisfied with the question, then go answer the question and have a referendum.
Okay, all right.
I wanted to weigh in on the timing, and
finally,
just very briefly, when you look at the role of Parliament, if you leave even the question of let's have a referendum or not have a referendum, Parliament and parliamentarians and the National Assembly is constantly battling with questions of review of different legislations. And among the roles, if you look at Article 94, Parliament considers and amends the Constitution and alters boundaries. There are already several pieces of proposed amendments. We have the Kamket one, we have the Ndia MP. I have proposed amendments to Article 115. I want to bring another one on the question of this cabinet issue, and another one also to try and create a parliamentary fund. So the Constitution is going to be amended with or without the context of the referendum that has come. And there are already notices and bills that have been put in place. So I think it's good that we understand that. So the only time that a referendum question comes is if you look at it against the context of Article 255. There is amendment to the Constitution by a parliamentary process and by popular initiative, things that go to the referendum and things that don't go to the referendum. So the Constitution is going to be changed anyway, and there are already several pending bills, including the ones about the change of the election day by Honorable Chris Wamalo.
Yeah.